Welcome, everyone. I'm Lee Nadler, founder of Sherpa Marketing and chairman of the board for the Advertising Club of New York. For those of you who have joined us before, this is a series called Conversations With, where I'm speaking with fellow Advertising Club board members and leaders in the industry. It's a personal and professional conversation about these extraordinary times. The Ad Club and the Andy Awards are committed to keeping our community connected, even while we are apart physically. I hope you've tuned into some of these programs. All of them can be seen inside the Advertising Club's website in an area called the Virtual Clubhouse. This is an opportunity not only to have a conversation, but also allow for those of you who are listening in to be able to ask questions. So please do share your questions in the Q&A section, and we will get to those at the end. Today, we are extremely just not only pleased, but we are fortunate to have Sandra Sims-Williams join us. She's been an Advertising Club board member for a number of years, like myself. She pretty recently became the Senior Vice President of Diversity and Inclusion for Nielsen, a title that she held at Publicis for years before that. And in most of these conversations with leaders that we've been having, we've kind of followed a pretty simple structure of talking about what the company that the person works with is doing, what the teams within the person's organization are doing that we can all learn from, and also some suggestions for career advice. And up until last week, a lot of those focus areas have been on the changes because of COVID and a lot of the ramifications for many of our careers and companies. With the more recent tragic events, particularly with Mr. Floyd, this conversation that Sandra and I were preparing for, last night we got on the phone and realized that we need to have a conversation at a different level. And I'm pleased to introduce Sandra. She'd like to share something with you to start our conversation. Thank you, Sandra, for joining.
Thank you, Lee, and thank everyone who's on the line today. The weekend, last week, it's been a harrowing time. It's not like we haven't been here before, but it is like a new time. Because first came COVID-19, which ravaged my people, and no one said anything. Then they came for my job, and no one said anything. Then they took Ahmaud, and no one said anything, and Breonna, but no one said anything. And then they saw George taken from us, and no one said anything. The question is, do you see us? Do you see me? I'm asking, do you see us? Is this okay? Because truly, this is rage. And I say that because people always want to hammer on or focus on the riots or the burning. But a life was taken, and many lives have been taken. The buildings can be rebuilt. The stores can start over again. But George is not coming back. And so we need to get real about what we're doing in this country, because we appear really to hypocrites, because this is supposed to be a democracy. So with that, I'm sure that this is heavy lifting for all of us. It's really heavy lifting for Black We call our people associates, Black employees across the industry. A lot of them say to me, then they expect me to come to work and work. They expect me to be present. They expect me to do that last assignment. And it's hard. It's hard. I personally would like to take a vacation, mental vacation, because this is very difficult. I have a son, and I have to be worried about my son. And I have to be worried about my son, not like a white mother. See, I know that he could have a confrontation and it could end just like George. And you know, George was not even fighting. It was not even a fight. And George died. It's heavy. It's heavy out here. And I'm sure that for leaders, it is a time where they have to really make some choices about, so what, and this is what comes, what do I say? What do I do? And it's important that if we do anything today, we need to improve where we are for sure. And we need to address things that are happening around us. Silence, again, is not something that is welcome at this point. It's just not welcome. Our white colleagues, our white leaders have to step up, speak up, and do something.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. In some of our conversations leading up to this, you shared several things, and one of the takeaways that's just so simple is to start out by asking, how are you doing?
Mm.
And
well,
so
yeah,
maybe you can answer that and also elaborate on some other very powerful but simple things that can open a door to a conversation about how this human being is doing, as opposed to just how are you doing on that project.
Mm-hmm. So, there's always silver linings with these situations and this time. This is a time none of us certainly would have even thought of, or nobody, I don't know if we've even created this in a movie, but this is not something that we would have thought would have happened to us. And the Zoom, the checkerboard, I call it, is an opportunity to really ask people how they are. You know, when we saw each other physically face to face, oh, how you doing? And we hardly waited for the answer. But now we are waiting for the answer, and we're digging deeper that, are you okay? We have people who are isolated. We have a global company. We have people who were assigned in different countries where that's not their home country. And so they're isolated and they're reaching out. I have heard from people I haven't heard from in years. I think that's important for us to say that there's a positive side to human interaction, because we're concerned. We are genuinely now concerned about our own brothers and sisters, because this is real time. This is not fake. This is real time.
Right.
So I thank you for asking. I'm struggling, but I keep going. I come from a different generation. I do feel for my young people, because they haven't gone through this. They haven't gone through anything like this. Now, I haven't gone through COVID, but I certainly have gone through civil rights. And we are back there. It's like unbelievable that we actually have gotten back to a place that we thought we had escaped from. And when, Selma happened, you think, well, we'll never have to do that again. Well, yeah, we now have to become that again. But this time we have to have a lot more white brothers and sisters with us to speak. I don't know if you saw this online, but I saw, I don't remember what city, but all of the white protesters lined up in front of the Black protesters. They were between the Black protesters and the police. That's a statement. That's stepping up, speaking up, and being present. And our leaders, just ask the question, how are you doing? Make calls. Show genuine concern that, I know, I don't know where you are with that, but as a human being, know that you must be devastated.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I know one of the other things that you've talked about, and a program that you put in place that maybe you can share a quick video with us on, is saying thank you, also showing appreciation in a different way. What are some of the ways that Nielsen is doing that?
Yes, we did that with our leaders. And it was actually the very beginning of COVID, not even knowing how long this was going to last. So they can run the video. Mm.
Thank you for sharing that. Can you talk about a little bit of just how the leadership team either came together to think through that, but other leadership decisions that you're making that maybe some on the other end of this webinar can take as advice to move forward in their organization and bring people together?
Well, the one thing that I think is most important for leaders is to be transparent, to be vulnerable, show your feelings. We definitely think that if you are trying to appear as though this is not bothering you, that's not being real. I don't know what human being this could not bother, that you're isolated, you're in your home, you can't move, I mean, you can't leave. And understanding, you know, the difference between you being in a house and somebody being in an apartment, those are two different worlds. Transparency, being vocal. That concern that I talk about is when I ask you how you're doing, then come back behind that and give me what I need. If you are asking for something, then supply that. We all suddenly went home. We don't all have the same sort of supplies. We don't have the same, what is it, bandwidth for internet. The home supplies are not the same. We also have to be welcoming into your home. We're in your home.
Right.
So we have to be, we have a work from home pledge. So you have to be, as a guest, you're coming into my home. And so as a guest, you're to be polite when you see my child or that your dog is there. You're not gonna lock your dog up, and you shouldn't lock your children up. We have to be passionate about what's happening now and not make people feel that they're up against it if they appear with their children and a meeting is interrupted. It's not the same, people. And I think it's also allowing leaders to know people up close and personal.
Yeah.
You see, you have someone in your home.
Yeah.
You can't ignore who's in your home. That's real. That is real time. And I think that as we, I love that. Yeah, and also making room for improvement in our communication styles. Like we have to adjust our communication style. And by the way, you need to look at those photos. I mean, the pictures on the screen. You can tell when people are under stress. You can tell. So pay attention to that. You have to be more sensitive to that. Let's see, we have a PMO. It was started. And then because we're global, we have to be conscious of all of our offices around the world because they're not all at the same level of COVID. And
Can
we
you
had
explain for people what a PMO means?
project management.
Yeah.
Yeah, so official project management. It's for the purposes of people first. That was our motto, people first, safety, making sure that people had the PPE, because we have people who are in the field. And then, of course, as time moved on, we had to pull them from the field. So, you know, you have to be sensitive of it's talk about dotting I's and crossing T's. You have to think about this and how it's going to affect people. Then you have to do, you know, we had to do furloughs. And we know people have to do this. I will say to you that I've been at Nielsen now this will be starting month 6. I have not met not one person who doesn't love Nielsen, which is a good thing. But I had not come into a company where people just love their company. And I can tell because people do take care of each other. And that's something that we can take away. Take care of your people. And coming out of this, they will stay with you. They will be loyal to you. I would say that to any client at this point too. It is how you show up in this climate that will tell you whether or not they're going to stay with you.
Yeah, that's a great point. And it's also interesting for companies to figure out also how to message their purpose, right? Maybe even pivoting from Nielsen to the work that the Ad Club, a nonprofit group around for over 100 years, has been doing, including establishing a foundation in 1986. And since that time, through the support of members who pay membership dues and get benefits from those dues for their teams and their companies, but other things like media action, where media companies are donating space to be used by new clients, and that money goes toward the advertising club that supports initiatives to help not only the next generation move forward through internships and high school programs, but also the current generation of people trying to move up in the industry, especially women of color, through the fellows program. Can you talk about some of your experiences through what the Ad Club is doing and has done, and what can we do that's even more helpful now that there's so much attention focused on this important effort?
Well, I think that given what the Ad Club has been doing, I think that the advertising industry and the media industry needs to step up to join the Ad Club in terms of, you know what, speak up, assist us in making sure that the ad fellows, for example, have the kinds of virtual contacts that they can garner to develop their professionalism. There is the need for tools that are necessary for people to develop. The one thing that Gina and I talked about originally, even before we did the masterclass, is that people get a chance to get outside of their sphere and help develop them among other people that have like minds, but also have different experiences. Experience is what is necessary for people to change and to pivot. I'm a believer of being high touch. And so when we developed the masterclass and the Ad Fellows program to run tandem, it was to develop women of color in a special way. Where they were taken to conferences where they met people from their client side. This was to help develop them and to bring them along in terms of being voices in the ad industry. And quite a few have proven to be just that, strong voices in the advertising industry. And the leaders of these agencies need to step up and send more women of color to the masterclass, as well as to the the fellows. Sorry.
Yeah, right before the shutdown with COVID, you were on one of those trips. Do you want to just mention that
Yes.
to contextualize for people?
Yes. So example, for the Ad Fellows, we've added conferences as well as being an experience, a high touch experience, but it's actually professional development. So as soon as I got to Nielsen, that was the first thing that I did as well. We selected 10 women and we took them to Black Enterprise Women of Power Summit. It is a 3-day event where they have the opportunity to join in sessions where it is all about you and your presence and your presentation, developing you as a speaker, developing you as a leader. So these are the kinds of environments we want to take these women. And the feedback that comes with it is when these women come back, I have often heard this, it's like a changed person. Because it's a place where they are in with more than 500 women of color who look like them. And that gives them a secure base to explore and to test themselves. And when they come back, they feel stronger. See, people don't know the story of being only. And see, when you're in an environment where you're only and people don't talk to you or they don't engage you enough to know who you are, that's rough. That's your life. This is how it goes sometimes. And you have to learn how to keep pushing forward, even when the winds are against you.
Yeah. Well, let's take that jumping off point, because I know that throughout your career, you've probably been given great advice by mentors. You've probably provided great advice for people. You know, there's a lot of different circumstances right now. You've touched on some of them. There are people on this call, you know, who are members of the Ad Club, or maybe we're in a position that now they're not in anymore. And there's a lot of, again, different circumstances for everybody. But maybe for those people first that are still within inside of a company and now trying to navigate through this time, what career advice could you help? Again, knowing there's so many different stages in one's career and financial situations, and some people hate their job to begin with, and some people love their job. But any helpful advice for people in a company, and then maybe we can talk about people who now are trying to figure out their next career move.
Right. I would say to you that this is definitely a time of reflection. Because you have some time. I don't know that a lot of people have a lot of time, but you do have some time to reflect about am I in the right space? Am I in the right place at this point? Some people are on furlough. Some people might have lost their jobs, but this is a pivoting time. So my advice to people is, what are the things that make you happy? Because I think from this COVID moment, we don't have time in life to lose. We just don't have it. And we took it for granted. And COVID really woke us up. You cannot take this for granted. So you need to utilize your time wisely and wonderfully for you. And it is about you. And it's about, okay, so what works for me? You need to be reading about what are the things that really work for you. How do you operate within the confines of the organizations you're in? Is that really where you want to be? And I'm not trying to make people leave their jobs. I'm trying to encourage you to be the best that you can be in your life journey.
And
so
is that only self-reflection, or as a person who's worked in the, let's say, HR sphere, is that helpful also to get feedback from others that could
it's
help?
about, it's about feedback, but it's also about building relationships, because this is a time that you can do it. When people have reached out to me that I haven't heard from in a while, or people brand new, of course at Nielsen, there are some people who just have reached out, not thinking that I actually would respond. But you can reach out. I would tell people, reach out to your CEO at this point. You need to talk. You need to be visible. You do not need to fade into the sunset. It is important that you show up. And the other piece is how you show up. Don't just call and say, you know, I'd like to use your time. You got to use people's time wisely. Come with an agenda. Explain who you are. And by the way, when I talk about self-reflection, who are you? Self-awareness is the first piece. Self-awareness, understanding who you are, where you are, and whose you are. Those are important pieces to having a conversation, engaging with leaders. Now, I have leaders who are happy to have the conversations, but they also want to know, so how can I help you? You would be surprised. I tell people this, you're surprised when people actually they want to help you. Because leaders, that's their ego, really, a lot, but it's okay, we'll take it. But you should reach out, you should build relationships at this point. And the other thing is helping others. Helping others, do not just do you should be helping others. And that means we have created, by the way, let's not forget to mention mental health.
Yes.
Mental health at this point is one of the things, as I have meetings with the ERGs. Those are employee resource groups at Nielsen, and I have them every 3 weeks. It's called a listening tour, and I need to hear where they are. And we use that information and data to do and approve resources for people. So we presented to them webinars and a virtual therapist, so that people had someone that they could talk to, because this is a troubling time. So, by the way, admit that you have issues. It's okay. So these are things that you can do.
Right. I want to, by the way, encourage people to submit questions in the Q&A on their screen, and we'll start to get to those. Talk about, you mentioned speaking up, right? And I think it's somewhat confusing for people who are trying to figure out how to show support, which is maybe partly where the question comes from: how can I help you? What can I do? Right? Because like there are a lot of people who are action oriented and want to take positive steps and not just talk and have this dissipate only to stay under the surface. And here we go again, right? And some of the actions for people, especially, in the group that's been raised on social media, is it can be very powerful as a platform. It can also be confusing in terms of what to say, how to say it. To your point of being authentic, in some ways, social media is seen as authentic or not authentic, but there are a lot of different ways from taking action and showing your support. But I also think, and you and I talked about this, like there's something inside of each of us, and for those that do have family members around us or are raising children like myself, there's such a important message to discuss right now so that the next generation does not continue this pattern that has been going on for generations. What are some of the things from your perspective that people can do? It's even confusing to us as a family who, we're in Manhattan and there are protests happening blocks away and COVID is happening, which puts people in danger. What are some of the suggestions or resources or tools that maybe can be looked at by people to be able to move things forward and be positive in their own way?
Well, I'm going to start from more the individual. And I think this certainly is, this is choice. What are you comfortable with? There are lots of organizations that need financial assistance in order to change social justice. And that's something that I would recommend people look up, because they do need to know some history. a lot of times people refuse to believe what has happened, but they do need to have some history. And there are lots of books out here for people to read. I will say to those who may take to calling or texting their Black friends, I would say don't burden them with trying to course correct you. I'm not insulting you. I'm just telling you right now, this is not the time. I would say learn something, educate yourself so that you are aware of what the history is in this country. We didn't get here by ourselves. This was a tug of war that has continued to go on of, better and best and those who are just completely disregarded. And I would say that as leaders, as organizations, they too can reach out to the different, what is going to be their focus? And I keep reading CEO messages that they're giving to their companies. What is your message? Where do you want to land with this? And I think now people finally understand Colin Kaepernick taking the knee. They finally get it, that this man has been denigrated for doing that when he was just trying to say, take your knee off my neck. And now we're here. It took all of that to get here. And so if you want to speak to the NFL and tell them to give that man a job. If you want to speak in ways that are going to make change in how police officers are trained. There are ways in which you can affect by legislature and the people you vote for. There is change that can happen, but you've got to participate. And you can join us. You can join us at the Ad Club and the things that we do regarding diversity and inclusion, the conversations that we have, the platforms that have been created with this organization that's over 100 years old. There are people who are working on this all the time. This is not a fashion statement or a trend. You need to be in it and stay in it, because I do believe this right now is not going to change or pivot. We're not going to pivot away from it. I purchased a t-shirt this past weekend. Vote or die. That's where we are. That's how serious this is at this point. And I'm saying that with you as an individual, you make your choice, but you also can be influential within your organization to get your leaders to wake the heck up. And for the advertising industry who support clients who get their revenue from this Black community, you need to wake up. You need to check out the data regarding what is being purchased by Black Americans. Trillions and trillions of dollars. We're in this kind of business. Do your homework. I have a Sandra Sister Circle, a group of 10 women that I meet with every month. And I help them, and they help me, by the way. There is reverse mentoring because all this technology is getting on my nerves, but okay. But they teach me. And I think it's important for us to have those kind of circles. People they need to talk. And I would suggest to any CEO, call up a group of Black employees. If you have enough, call them up and have a meeting. They're not going to hurt you. It will increase your awareness of how people think and feel. It's very important to how we go forward.
I appreciate that very much. Speaking of some of the, either letters that CEOs are putting out there or messages from brands, I won't ask you to call any out unless you have any that are examples of, what you think are, let's say, helpful, or, I don't want to try to bucket this into best practices, but
the messages has to be transparent. It has to be sincere. It has to be on point. I will say that, and I will call this one out because I was actually surprised. Peloton, the CEO from Peloton put a very righteous, on point message to his employees. And he called it what it was, racism. He called it out. And I think you have to, because I know sometimes in our communications, we want to be like, I want to kind of stay in the middle. Stop staying in the middle, because George Floyd was not in the middle. This is racism, and it was racism at its worst. And if you, CEO, are okay with that, then don't speak. Your silence will say it all. So I would just tell people, look up the CEOs for, in fact, for your clients, you should look them up, see what they say.
Right. And what the companies do, right?
Mm-hmm.
Either previously, because actions speak, in this case, louder than words, and what new initiatives do companies put into place with recognition? Because we also have to recognize there is a need to move forward, right? And if Mr. Floyd's murder, and I'll call it for what it is,
Yeah.
can move people forward in a way to not only recognize and post hashtags, but make changes. And we're focused on this marketing advertising industry where I've been reading numbers that there's a lot floating around right now, but let's just say at executive levels, managerial levels, and certainly board levels, there's a lot of work to be done.
Absolutely.
And action can be taken. This is a need to move forward as a continuum and not let it dissipate down under the surface after the protests end.
It's from the top down. And as you say, I would tell anyone, look at your board membership, look at your leadership management team. Is there a diverse slate of people there who actually would understand? And I don't mean putting people there just for them to fill a seat. It is about being inclusive and making them feel that they belong. That is important to people of color when they come into your organization. Listen, when I go into a room, I look around to see who's there. It makes a difference. It makes a difference about, do I really feel welcome here? Do they really include everyone? We are approaching this in a way that sometimes you just want to fill seats so you can say, well, you see, we have this. No. It's not enough that you do that. Because then when you really get to these people and ask, are you a participant? Do you belong? Do they hear you? No, just sitting there like a flower. No, you're not to be just a flower or plant sitting in a room. You are to be a participant and belong, and that they respect you for who you are and your input. I will say that professional development is an important piece, but I also want to say professional development for my white colleagues is necessary. It's necessary in their headset. How do you manage diverse teams? How do you manage diversity, period? What does inclusion mean to you? Helping people see that. We are going to have a town hall on Thursday, and the topic is racism. What is racism and what is privilege? And how do we take those two and help you see your way clear to increase your engagement with different people? I often ask people, if you had a dinner party, who would be there? Increase your membership, increase your friendships to be diverse. And this is, again, not counting heads. This is about being sincere. And by the way, it increases your intelligence and your understanding of human engagement. Cultures are different, and that's good. So learn about different cultures. It makes the world so inviting. I always find the people who've traveled are the most liberal because they know it's different, and it's good for the difference to be there.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thank you. A bunch of people are trying to figure out now this balance or rebalance of personal and professional lives. And you talked so beautifully about the notion that you're a guest in somebody's home now.
Mhm.
That line is it gone now? Is it again an opportunity to kind of look differently at bringing your whole self to a situation, but also to try and recalibrate that kind of professional personal balance line separation? Like
Yeah, you know, I'm from the old school side. There is a level in which I will just say, don't get crazy. There is a point where you're still working, so please don't get crazy. Don't show up in your pajamas. This is not. We are professionals still, but I am going to respect that you're in your home, and I do think that that's important to, you know, for people to gauge. And I also think that when we get ready to do reviews of people, we're going to have to teach our managers, do not hold that against somebody, because I can tell you that bias will show up, and it'll show up unrighteously. Do not hold that against people. No, she could not pay attention right then because her child was there. Don't hold that against a person. We have you know, two parents in a home. They both are trying to do their jobs. So it's as you say, recalibrating. It is about when it's time to really look at how you're reviewing people, understand our world has changed, and have empathy.
empathy is what I was going to exactly get to.
Yeah,
That's
have empathy. I can't imagine trying to work and have two kids running around. I think I might blow my head off.
yeah. We're coming up at the end of our discussion. Before we kind of wrap things up, is there anything else that you wanted to share that we haven't gotten to yet?
I'm looking at my notes. I just want to make sure that whatever company you're in, that you are aware of your standing, that you reach out to your manager and your manager's manager, and I say that freely, because they need to know how you're doing. And if they don't reach out to you, I would reach out to them and explain to them. This is a time to be bold, to explain. So let me just explain to you how I feel. I told my son the same thing. I said, I'm not sure that your boss actually understands you. And perhaps you need to explain that you are a Black man in America with a bullseye on your back. You need to explain that, because if she doesn't understand, she'll never understand now. It's time to understand.
Thank you.
And wait, and when you come and say, so how are you doing? Not so good.
Right.
And so when I say that, be ready. Yeah, be ready.
Yeah, I think you're right. We're used to walking past each other in the hall. How you doing? And you almost don't even answer. You just say, how you doing?
Yeah, right.
Like
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for this conversation and for all that you do for the advertising club and the industry. As we have done with these conversations, we'd like to end with a quote that you find inspiring and want to share, and then I will share with some folks how they can learn more and get more involved, and we will continue the conversations. And
Okay. It's silence is not an option. Now, that quote is from Sandra, not from anybody else, but it is based on some of the things that Martin Luther King, he has two quotes about silence. So no, silence is not an option.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I have two quick quotes also from Maya Angelou, who
Favorite?
yeah. The first is, hate. It has caused a lot of problems in the world, but has not solved one yet.
Mm-hmm. That's
And the
right.
second is, success is liking yourself, liking what you do, and liking how you do it.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lee.
And if folks want to share, this recording will be available in a couple of days. There are other conversations that are also, as I mentioned, in the Ad Club virtual clubhouse. On June 16th, we will have a conversation with Mike Solet from Nestle, another Advertising Club of New York board member. And I just want to wish everybody peace right now.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Lee.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it. Thank you, Gina. Bye-bye.